Pardon me, I had myself muted just there. Welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, as ever with Nina Guardian sports editor Shane Brophy. Shane, plenty of Tipperary stuff happening, even if the hurlers aren't out in action just at the moment. We've plenty to talk about. We've the Tip footballers and their exploits at the weekend, obviously coming up just short against Cavan. We'll talk about the under-20 footballers. We'll talk about Liam Cahill winning a league title with Waterford. We'll look at the minor hurlers and maybe even about a couple of the clubs at the weekend who were performing in league action. But I suppose we have to start with the Tipperary footballers. Agonising stuff against Cavan at Croke Park, came up just short. Obviously, promotion is already in the bag, so that's the main thing there. But what were your thoughts when you saw Tipperary make that late push? Stephen Quirk smashed the underside of the crossbar, coming up just short, 2-10 to 15 points.
Yeah, I thought they were very unlucky. From watching the game on TG Carr, I thought Tip were the better team. I thought technically I think Tip were the better team. Okay, you can say Cavan shot an awful lot of wides, but I thought they shot from some very, very poor positions too. Well, I thought Tip were better in terms of working the ball into a better position. But look, I suppose there were concerns, particularly from the first Cavan game, that Cavan were able to create goal chances, and the two goals were the difference in the end. And Tip scored 3 more times. And look, the Tipper had a couple of goal chances too, and they just didn't go in. So particularly the Stephen Quirk goal, a shot at the very end where, God, it was a couple of inches, and it could have been the Germany 1966 thing again. I think it did touch the line, but it didn't go over. But I don't know. I thought the performance was decent. It just, I suppose that the manner of the second goal, where Tip had gone 2 ahead and looked like they were set to push on, and just Stephen Quirk just got caught in possession a small bit, and Cavan counter-attacked quickly, and Tip were just caught short of numbers, and Cavan went up and went back up 3 points, and it was just too difficult to pull back. But I think overall, I think that the performance was very, very encouraging, I thought.
Yeah, Paddy Lynch's composed finishes for the goals, that kind of was the difference a little bit. They were beautiful finishes, really natural stuff, and Tip could have done with a little bit of that in front of goal.
Yeah, you got Tommy Maher in the first half. Just maybe it was his first start at senior level. He just probably caught further up the field than he thought he was. Just didn't get it. Thought he had a bit more time in the ball to get himself. Said Mikey O'Shea caught him. Just ended up getting a point, but just probably needed to be half a yard quicker to get the goal chance on. But look, I thought technically, I suppose in the second half when Tip went from 2 down to 2 up, I said, God, there's really something modern here. Bill Maher and Kevin Fahey were flying it. Jack Kennedy was good on the ball, and Mark Russell was kicking points for sport, and Conor Sweeney was nearly unplayable with a full forward. I think the people who were maybe had heard that Tipperary were improving and hadn't seen them play, and they saw them on telly last week, would have seen, okay, they play a lovely brand of football. Okay, they lost the game, but look, it's not huge in the greater scheme of things. They've got promoted. That's the key one, and they have some positive momentum to take into the championship.
Were you surprised to see Mark Russell withdrawn in the 54th minute? He'd had a fantastic game, getting some great scores, a couple of them from the sideline. Now, I'm sure management had their reasons. They were looking at what we were looking at. They saw him knocking over great scores. But was there even an option to put him in maybe full forward or something like that?
I don't think so. Again, fairness to David Power said afterwards that Mark had signalled after the 4th point that he was running on empty at that stage. And look, I just think intercounty football is just so strategic. It's you can't. I think the day of putting a guy in full forward, it's not club games anymore where you can sort of do that. If you were taking Mark Russell out of midfield, you've sort of got to replace him with a like-for-like guy. So if you put him in, maybe in the full forward line, who of the starting 15 can slot into the middle of the field and do the same job? You can't. You sort of have to get somebody off the bench to do his job. And Stephen Quirk has been doing that the last couple of games. Nearly, I think, like-for-like replacement for Stephen Quirk for Russell around the 50th, 55th minute. And look, I suppose, it was a tough 20 minutes for Steve, and a couple of turnovers there, one for the goal, and then look, he almost had that redemption moment with the shot off the crossbar. It was a great catch in the square among a sea of bodies, and just had very little time to turn and get a shot away. Just fierce and lucky. But Look, I suppose, and we would have seen Tip the last few games. Russell, particularly since he got his first start against Sligo, he's always come off around the 55th minute. He has strapping on a knee injury there from the Carlow game. So look, they potentially could have done him worse damage by leaving him out there, even playing him in at full forward. So look, I know for people who the people who would know the background who would have thought maybe it was a strange call, but look, Mark Russell knows his own body, and if he felt he had no more to give, and I like that honesty in a player. I remember, was it in the 2020 Munster final when Kevin Fahey went to the sideline after he picked up his after he got a warning while on a yellow card. He more or less said to David Power, even though Kevin's playing very well, he more or less said to David, I'm running, sailing close to the wind. Do you want to take me off here? And look, they took him off, even though he was playing well. He knew he was running the gauntlet of a second yellow and potentially going down to 14 men. And I like that honesty from players, like so.
Yeah, you'd have to. Boom Boom 43 says Russell was having a point of the year competition with himself. It really was. The quality of them scores, outrageous. The cheek to take some of them on was incredible. But sure, he obviously backs himself with good reason.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he meant the third one. I think maybe he was trying to play a floater into Conor Sweeney at the edge of the square.
Well,
maybe
he just got him the benefit of the doubt.
It was just one of those. The way it was just Conor Sweeney is a very, very good player. If you stick a floater in there where he get a fist on it and maybe into the back of the net, so maybe he just put a little too much onto it, but it looked a classy point anyway. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he meant it and that he was going for a score.
Yeah. So Sean O'Connor going off early in the game wasn't helpful either. Tipperary could have done with having everyone throughout the course of that game. How do you think it sets Tip up for a Munster Championship where everyone realises that Tipperary are on the plum side of the draw?
Pretty well. Look, they have the 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks before they play Waterford in Dungarvan, and you can be sure. Look, after the league game, which ended in a draw, like Tip, if there's any sloppiness or softness going down there, it's going to be gone now. They know they're going to be in for a battle down there. Waterford at home ground, like they'll probably be lining up think we have a great chance to beat Tip. So look, but Tip are playing better football now, and I like to think if the first 10 or 15 minutes of Tip start at a high tempo and get ahead and stay ahead, they'll win that game. And then the semi-final against I think it's Tip are sort of in a no-lose situation here. Okay, they wouldn't fear playing Clare or Limerick in a semi-final. So, and if you go in with a bit of freedom and win, you're in the Munster final and you're in the last 16 as Sam Maguire. But if you go in and play and lose, you fall into the Titan Cup where potentially you have a chance of winning silverware. So I think that Munster semi-final, Tip can play with an awful lot of freedom because they're potentially, they actually could be gaining by losing the game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I
know. One of those counties like Offaly that could maybe benefit from a good Titan Cup run where maybe potentially you could get a clipping off Kerry in a Munster final and then maybe play a Tyrone or a Dublin in the first round of the Sam Maguire and maybe get that's
that can be damaging in terms of like you want to bring on a panel, winning games, staying together for longer.
I'm not playing down. I'm just being realistic. A Tipper Division 4 team, you put them up against Kerry, even going at 70-75%, it's going to be a long afternoon. I think a Tip Kerry Munster final would be in Killarney as well. It's Tip played Kerry in Thurles last year, so it's unless Cork upset the thing again.
Yeah, which best will in the world, no matter what the venue is, doesn't feel like it's all that likely. Yeah. And if Tip were to beat Waterford finished bottom of all 4 divisions, so Tip will be expected to win that. You're against Clare or Limerick, both of whom will be Division 2 teams next year. Obviously, Limerick lost to Louth at the weekend. What about the Tipperary under-20 footballers? So Paddy Christie's involved with the seniors. He's over the 20s. It's Clare on Monday in Milltown Malbay. Tip got to the final last year, lost by 10 to Keith Rickens Cork. Last one in 2015. How do you feel the footballers are set up?
Like you'd have to think after last year with the work Paddy Christie and the backroom team put into them, they think there was a lot of momentum from last year. There's a nice few survivors from that game or from Campion. There's pity the likes of Conor Cahill and Jamie Duncan have have gone over with the under 20 hurlers. But look, you're always going to have that where, I suppose, when you're pulling from the same pool, that maybe some guys would move from football to hurling. But I suppose the issue maybe for this year's team would be, like, Sean O'Connor did an awful lot of scoring last year, and of course he's overage now, and like Tip don't have that sort of marquee forward that he was last year. Like Cahill Deely, who would have got a good number of runs for the seniors off the bench. Like, he'll probably be their key man, or maybe midfield or centre forward. A lot of survivors in defence. Ben Comerford, Emmett Butler, players like that. Ty Condon, full back. So I think defensively, Tip will be very, very solid. Could be up at the forward end of the field, where you maybe worry where the scores are going to come from. But like, Clare will be favourites. Clare have had a better run in this sort of age group, minor under 18, the last couple of years. But it all depends, like, who's available. I know Shane Meehan was a big player for the Clare minor footballers a few years ago. I know he's in with the senior hurlers. I don't know whether he's part of the under 20 footballers or not. Like, he was very, very good for them at underage levels. So look, it's straight knockout. It's I suppose really you're going away from home, you have to play above yourselves. But look, Paddy Christie and the boys last year proved very, very good at getting results, and they play a lovely brand of football as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing them in action.
And I suppose the prize then is a clash against Kerry in the semi-finals. Tip last won this competition in 2015. Yeah. Waterford will play Limerick on the other side, and the winner of that will play Cork. So what about the Division 1 final there on Saturday evening at Semple Stadium? Waterford 420, Cork 123. It was probably more comprehensive than the scoreline suggests. And Liam Cahill has his first silverware as Dacia manager.
Yeah, I know you were down there. I watched. I got most of the game. I wasn't surprised Waterford won. I couldn't believe Cork were favourites into this game. I'm not convinced by Cork that they've improved that massively from last year. And
not with that back line.
But I've been proved right. Like, if you get physical with them and up the intensity, they're still like they're a team that wants to play athletic, fast-paced hurling, taking the physicality out of it. But if you were to bring the physicality, intensity into it, they're under pressure. And look, you see, any time Waterford were able to run at them, they looked like they were going to open them up. And then at the other end of the field, like, Cork got 123. But how many times did they look to take on the Waterford defender and try and force a goal chance, or maybe have a guy coming off the shoot? Rarely did that. Like, so I just thought it validated Waterford's standing as, I wouldn't say they're the team to beat. I wouldn't go strongly as Derek McGrath has gone to that, but they're definitely Limerick's closest challengers at the moment.
Yeah, and we're hearing different injury issues with Limerick at the moment. So like, the first week is going to be brilliant. There'll be blood in the Waterford against Tip, blood in the water, Waterford, Tip, and Limerick against Cork. But one of the big problems I had with Cork is, like you said, there weren't enough Cork lads running straight down the middle. Shane Barrett did it after about the 20th minute. Like, I have the image here that I showed the other day on my own show. But like, it's just the defenders didn't clear out of the way. They actually came in and clogged. Sorry, the attackers clogged it, Horgan and Lahan, by not clearing out of the way, which meant Barrett ran into traffic. He got dispossessed. But too often the problem was that this wasn't replicated by Cork running straight up the centre. Instead, there was players picking it up around midfield, running across the field and looking to shoot from 60 yards out. Like, if you're going to win in All Ireland, you need to run straight down the guts of the opposition. Yeah,
and like, if you run, okay, I know you showed the image there. It did look like Waterford had numbers back, so it would have been maybe difficult to score a goal. But look, if you test them, like, if he ran on there and even took on De Burka and pulled him down, you could pick De Burka on a yellow card. Like, you have to think long term about these things, or maybe you put a bit of doubt in their heads if you bring that run again, and maybe some Cork teammate might understand, okay, the next time if he makes that run, I've got to burst myself to get off the shoulder and get up there and support him and give him an option. So I just thought, a lot like the last few years, Cork, they'll throw up some lovely points, but like, if you're going to beat Waterford, as I put up on Twitter, you're going to have to get goals. And I think that's what Tipperary will be working a lot on in training up to Sunday week, is that if there's Tip are not going to beat Waterford out scoring at least 3 or 4 goals. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if we get close to somewhere between 8 and 10 goals total in that match in Walsh Park on Sunday week between both sides.
8 to 10 goals.
Yeah, total.
So you're
Waterford will get goals, and I think Tip showed enough in the match in Walsh Park where they had opportunities to take on the last man and didn't, that they will go for it this time, because I think they have no choice.
And are you hearing good soundings about Tipperary? I know they played A versus B games against Dublin a week and a half ago, maybe at this point. Won both of them, and apparently played quite well.
Yeah, no, I heard that as well. And I'm hearing there's a very good United camp, but I suppose not an awful lot being said of them, which in one way is a good thing, but in other ways you'd like to think that just don't forget about us a small bit. And it sort of reminds me of this game of the build-up of the 2018 All-Ireland Under-21 final, when Tip went to Limerick, raging underdogs against Cork. Cork had a star-studded team, but Tip's heart and a bit of backbone and desire came to the fore, and they won the game. I think Tip really need to tap into that old core Tipperary values to maybe bridge some of the gap that Waterford do have on them at the moment. And they do have it. You can have realism. They do, but I think that we'll see a very, very big Tip performance on Sunday week. I think even if we bring that and maybe lose narrowly, I think there's enough in that to take into the Clare game the following week. And I think that's the one thing Tip fans have got to understand. This is not, there's so much focus on the Waterford game. You can put everything into it and maybe come up short, but it doesn't mean it's a failure, because you've 3 more games to get your business done after that. And like if Tip come out of the Waterford game with enough positivity, enough things to take, particularly into the Clare game, like Tip, I was just going through the fixtures and the chronological order of them. I think if Tip beat Clare, win their 2 home games against Clare and Cork, I think that'll be enough to qualify in 3rd place. As I think Limerick and Waterford, just the way you go through the schedule and think who's going to win, might be a draw here. I just think that's my prediction, is that Limerick and Waterford will qualify, and a Tip and Cork on the last day in Thurles will be straight knockout for the 3rd place. So, geez, that'd be some crack if there's 45,000 in there for a knockout Tip Cork game, but like the old days.
Yeah, and there's going to be 45,000 at the first day of Limerick and Cork. I think that's going to be a great game. Like, we'll truly see where Limerick are at. Are they the team that's lost 4 or 5 league games, only getting a victory against Offaly in the last day out? Or have they timed it perfectly? Have they been training and, getting themselves ready for summer fair only? So that's the thing. We're in an unknown zone at the moment. John Cahill and Paul Kinnerk were sitting just in front of me in Semple Stadium the other day. They left with 5 minutes to go. They probably came away thinking Waterford looked like the real deal. And for Waterford to win that league final without Austin Gleeson, without Jamie Barron, who looks set to at least miss probably half of the Munster Championship, the way they have that team humming and that panel humming and everyone singing off the one hymn sheet, you nearly feel like it doesn't really matter who they plug in. They're just going to play the same way. They're going to keep turning and running at you. They're going to keep creating goals. Like Jack Prendergast misses a few games. Like, he's definitely a trusted soldier of Liam Cahill's, because he started every championship game, comes back in and he just plays like that. And he gets on ball and he runs at you, as he did against Tip as well. It just doesn't seem to matter who they put in. Ultimately, they'll put in a massive shift. And like Desi Hutchinson doesn't score until towards the end. But I'd say he ran those Cork defenders ragged, and he took some minding. They're just wearing down. That's my concern with Tip. We get worn down, and after it'll be like Watford are up by 3 points, then it's 4 points, then it's 3, then it's 5, then it's 3, then it's 6, and then ultimately it's 10 points with 5 minutes to go, and you're thinking, geez, how did that happen? That's the worry, and I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, because I think Liam Cahill has taken every excuse away from Waterford this year. And I just remember listening to his comments after the Tip Waterford game a few weeks ago. And he said it a few times, we put an awful lot of work into these guys over the winter. As if to say, and I suppose he looked back to last year, the Galway game and the Tipperary game where they faded in the second half. And then after 25 minutes in the All-Ireland semi-final, and I know it was their 5th game in a row, and they blew up after 25 minutes. They were with Limerick. That first 25 minutes, Limerick and Waterford last year was unbelievable, the physicality, the intensity, but Waterford had nothing in the legs after that. And I just think Cahill said, okay, we can't we can't afford to get caught like that where we're going to be blowing up with 15, 20 minutes to go. So we got to have guys able to go 70, or we got to be able to have guys that we can plug in early in the second half, maybe if some guys are starting to tire. And look, he has the luxury now of saying after the Tip game, if just say Jack Prendergast maybe he's exerted himself too much, he can plug somebody in, maybe a Kieran Bennett or Peter Hogan, and say, okay, you'll do this, you'll get the start this time, and Jack will come off the bench, and we won't lose it, we won't miss a beat, if you know what I mean. Like, the scary thing for me is when Stephen Bennett and Austin Gleeson get in the same field together. Like, how do you stop two of them? The two of them, people, yeah, but I think Hutchinson is the foil for the other two, because Hutchinson plays a lot like he played soccer. He makes runs into space and clears out space for the boys coming through the middle. And I just think, there's a lot about Austin Gleeson. I think Stephen Bennett is the best player in that. I think he's the best forward in that team. There's an arrogance about him, and there's a good arrogance about him. Like we saw that was one of the points against Tip. He more or less he shot it from 100 yards. I don't think he even looked. And you'd say to yourself, manager roar out, and what are you doing shooting from there? And you're not even looking. But he sort of gets away with it because he knows he's that good, and he believes he's that good. He's just been incredible, in the big games this year against Tip, and last Saturday he's been incredible.
You know, you mentioned there about how Hutchinson creates space, and again, this is an image I used the other day. But look, I might as well bring it up here. But like, this was the second goal, so Watford scored 2 in 50 seconds, and Neil Montgomery turned. And look, there's how many players did he after taking out, and one little move. But if you look at the top right of the screen, underneath the number 2, that's Desi Hutchinson, who pulled his man out of the way. If you look at in between the 21 and 14 at the top of the screen, Mikey Kiley's pulled his man out of the way. Because defenders have been pulled away, now when Montgomery breaks the line, he's got Bennett versus Mark Coleman, who's in no man's land.
Yeah.
They're brilliant at doing it. And they create goals. And look, up until the Antrim game, Tipperary were just relying on a break of a ball for a goal chance or a mistake at the back. Tip need a massive sea change in the space of those few weeks if they're going to get the goals that you're talking about, which will lead to 8 or 10 in one game.
Yeah. I think we saw an element of that in the Antrim game. I think he knew. We did. I think he knew Colin after the Waterford game. Like I do think Waterford didn't show fully their hand that day against Tip. There was a couple of times when maybe they could have pushed in for a few goals. And maybe just one of the games says, okay, we'll hold back because we might go after them, and when in the game that matters on Easter Sunday, so look, it could be even harder. But that's why I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw somewhere between 8 and 10 goals total in the game. Because I do think no matter how well you set up defensively against Waterford, they're still going to get 2 or 3 goals. Like, they're just so. It's like the Tip under 20s with Cahill and Beavens in 2019. Like, they got 8 goals against Waterford and Wexford in the semi-final, 3 in the Munster final against Cork, 4 in the first 15 minutes in the All-Ireland. Like, if you wire a team enough to say you're going to get goals, I don't think as good any defence that'll set up well enough can really stop you. And I think any team that's taken on Waterford this year have to know going out that taking your points when there's a 40% chance of maybe working a goal is not going to be good enough for you to beat them.
Yeah, taking the points and hoping that the goals will come just won't work. You have to have a plan for how the goals will come.
Or not going for it when the possibility is of working a goal. Like, last night I was at the minor match, and Tip turned over a Waterford puck out. Paddy McCormick got a point, but Damien Corbett was onside on his own. If Damien got that ball, it was in the net. Tip had the game won with 2 minutes to go. Tip ended up winning by 2 points with a clearance off the line. That lack of ruthlessness not to take that goal chance could have cost Tip. I just think top level hurling now, and Waterford are proving it. If there's a percentage, 50% chance or better of you working a goal chance, you've got to go for it, particularly against Waterford. You're frozen on me there, Shane.
And sorry, just froze there momentarily. But do you rule Cork out, or my personal opinion is I don't think Cork are done yet. I think a lot of issues have been highlighted once more. But if Limerick do come back a little bit at all, which, look, we don't know for sure yet. But I just don't think Cork are done just yet. And I think they're a team that's suited to playing against Limerick.
Oh, no, I definitely not. I wouldn't be writing them off. There is a sort of, I suppose, I think there's a British sports person's element coming into discourse now where Cork got lauded for a few weeks and they would lose one game and suddenly the doubts are coming. Same with Mayo. Like I don't think Mayo showed their hand at all in that match last weekend. Like why would you show how you'd mark David Clifford now when you know you're going to have to mark him later in the summer? But that's getting that's getting away from hurling. But look, I'd say there's no doubt Cork's focus all year would have been Easter Sunday, Limerick, Páirc Uí Chaoimh, 40,000 sellout crowd. Got to be ready for that. Because like Limerick are still the asset. They're still the All Ireland champions. They're the team you have to beat. And look, I think we'll see a different Cork team on Sunday week. And I think we'll know a small bit more about Limerick too. Because I was just looking back to the Limerick team that lost to Kilkenny in the qualifiers in 2017, Kylie's first year. There's 14 players, including Mike Casey. Okay, didn't play last year. Played that night that could play again like Sunday week. That's a lot of same faces in a 6-year period, and like they're an old team by any means, Shane, but they have a lot of miles in the legs, and you just don't know when will. They do need a bit of freshness there somewhere, and I'm not sure whether the Cahill O'Neills and Adam Englishes and the Colin Coughlin's did enough to push their way into the starting 15. They might be very, very good options off the bench, but I think this 15 that Limerick we see on Sunday week is largely going to be the same guys we've seen for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, are you going to throw Cahill O'Neill and Adam English and Colin Coughlin in for a 45,000 sellout down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh? It's a lot to ask of a young guy, so if they have some of the injuries that we were hearing about, maybe they're more likely to start Graham Mulcahy because obviously Peter Casey isn't available. Maybe they'll move Mike Casey in fullback with Dan Morrissey out wing back, Kyle Hayes up into the forwards. Again, that's a huge amount of movement and turning things around and asking players.
There's rumours that Will O'Donoghue is under pressure too. Like, and he's a great
And Cian Lynch didn't talk the other day against Dublin in a challenge match. So maybe it'll all come right on the night. They are a brilliant team. They've won 3 of the last 4. But it's a fair job if they're going to win an All-Ireland 3 in a row this year. So we should probably move on to the minors, who had a nice victory last night, 122 to 23 points down in Fairfield. Damien Corbett, he hit 1-8, a 46 score thriller. It's a big win for James Woodlock. I mean, last year obviously didn't go great, but I suppose there was a sense that by picking so many lads who were of age again this year, I think 14 out of 26 from last year are still eligible, that it was putting the eggs into this basket, so nearly needed to deliver.
I suppose first of all, some crowd in Dungarvan last night. Like, when a county is going well, the rising tide, like there must have been guts of 2,000 people down there. Really big crowd. Good night, good game. Nice. I wouldn't get too excited yet. Like it's a lot of scores for, but I suppose it's first round, and like I'm delighted for James and the boys because like they took an awful lot of stick last year. Look, particularly that Waterford game, we were so far off Waterford, it was scary, like in a lot of elements, and like the first 10-12 minutes last night, you said to yourself, God, is this going to be the same story again? It was 8 points to 1-1, like, and Waterford, just everything seemed to be on Waterford's terms. Like they were isolating our inside forwards, but slowly Tip got into the game. The half-back line, Sam O'Farrell, Ty Sheehan and Jack Callahan really stepped up well. Kieran Foley in the middle of the field was outstanding, 6 points, 3 from play. And then once they got confident of what they wanted to do, they tried to isolate Tom Delaney and Damien Corbett inside. They're not huge players, but very, very elusive, and like they were terrific. Like 1-5 from play between them to Corbett, 1-8 in total. So look, from where they were after 15 minutes, you thought this could be like Waterford. Jack Toomey hit the crossbar. Like it could have been 1-8 to 1-1 at that stage. Like for the way they fought back in that game, I thought, look, it said a lot about the backbone, and that's what I suppose the character played to the character of the manager. We know what James Woodlock was a great player for Tip. Like did a lot of donkey work, the unforeseen work, but you always knew you got 100% out of James, and he definitely got him out of the boys last night. And look, it's one step, like, and it is under 17. I'm wary of that, and like these matches are really only seeding games. Like it's 2 groups of 3, and Tip have Clare next Tuesday night in Thurles. And look, if they win that, they win the group and progress straight to a Munster semi-final, and Clare and Waterford are going to a quarter-final. So look, we can't underestimate the value of winning and getting confidence up, and particularly in the county. I don't know if you felt it at home last weekend. I don't know how you're home, but there's an awful lot of pessimism in the county at the moment. I think it's unfair just because, okay, we had a down year last year. Doesn't mean everything. It doesn't take much for the whole thing to turn around and a bit of positivity. And like it forced the 3 big games between Tip and Waterford. The under-20s are playing each other next Wednesday night in Thurles, and I think it's in Thurles, yeah. And then the game the following Sunday in Walsh Park. So nice one to put over Waterford starting off.
Yeah, like there is pessimism, but I don't think anyone's been unbelievably harsh on the team. I just think expectation is quite low. Nobody's expecting the Tipperary team all of a sudden to shoot the lights out this year.
But you still have to go into matches having some element of belief that you could win. Or like that's why I brought up the under-20 final a few years ago, where I think we all went to Gaelic grounds expecting Galway to win or Cork to win, maybe 20% chance, and then when Tip won afterwards, it was absolute elation because we all knew that Cork had technically the better hurlers, the Darragh Fitzgibbons, the Mark Colemans, but Tip's heart and desire and sheer doggedness nearly wore them down. And I'd love to see that come into the fore, particularly Sunday week in Waterford, because we will be raging underdogs, but we need to. I think if even if we lost, we saw some of that old core Tip values. I think Tip fans would turn around very quickly, and we'd have a big crowd in for Clare the following Sunday. That's just my thing. I'm all for realism, but you still got to get in behind your team somewhere. Like we still have a very, very good. I think we'll still have a good starting 15 on Sunday week. I think where Tip will fall short this year is the subs bench to bring. Like Limerick probably have a subs bench. Waterford have a subs bench. Galway probably have a subs bench. We probably have a lot of unheralded guys on the bench, but you never know. They might prove us wrong. They might prove me wrong. I won't put words in your mouth.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I got the Daisha angle for the minor match last night, so we'll have a listen here. I'm joined now by Tomás McCarthy of WLR-FM and the Waterford News and Star. Tomás, the minors last night in the Munster Championship round 1, Tipperary 122, Waterford 23 points. So a narrow enough victory for the Premier there. Hopefully a thing to, part of the things to come for the summer. Can you give me your kind of sum up of the game?
Yeah, probably a bit of a game of two halves, Shane, given the breeze that was in for our field on Tuesday night. Waterford started really brightly, but the Tipperary goal against the breeze from Damien Corbett, a really fine strike it was. That was a big score in the first half. Waterford had a goal chance a little bit earlier through Jack Toomey, hit the crossbar. So that was a bit of a game changer in it. I was really impressed by Damien Corbett in the corner. Really, for a small man, he's a great hand, and he was really torn in the side of Waterford all night. Got a goal in 8. Tom Delaney had a big second half, caused the Waterford full back line a lot of trouble. Kieran Foley as well at midfield was really impressive for them. The disappointing part for Waterford is to give away a lot of soft scores, trying to play the ball around the back. It broke down a couple of times, including for the sideline ball near the end that Damien Corbett clipped over. Gorgeous score, like from the 21, a really tight angle to shoot over a sideline, and that was from a Waterford mistake. Jack Toomey was outstanding for Waterford. When Tipperary through the kitchen sink of Waterford in the second half, he really stood up. Got 12 points, 9 frees, 3 from play. He won a lot of those frees as well. Really standout player for Waterford one for the future. And Waterford could nearly snatched at the end, a ball in around the house, a flick from Toomey deflected away for a 65. So they could have snatched at the death. The Waterford manager, Shane O'Hearn, very disappointed with their display afterwards. Didn't feel that they hurled to their potential whatsoever. Of course, they're not out of the championship. It leaves Tipperary in pole position now to qualify for a semi-final. Waterford more than likely going in to a quarter-final. But, certainly Waterford will need to sharpen up on those mistakes, that playing that ball out in the back. And in fairness to Tip, they were very ruthless. Any time that Waterford's short game broke down, they pounced on it straight away and got a score off it.
So it is group stages, as Tomas was pointing out there. Tipperary home to Clare next. Cork battered Kerry last night, 325-11. They'll play Limerick next. Do you like the group setup here? I suppose it gives everyone a chance to feel their teams out before they get to knockout.
Yeah, I do. And particularly for under 17s, I thought the last 2 years, with COVID, the one and done nature of it is tough, because if you just, lads could be nervous coming in and you mightn't perform, and that's it. So look, they're guaranteed 3 games. Every team is guaranteed 3 matches. You have 2 group games, and then you have 1 guaranteed knockout game. So I suppose, like you mentioned, the Waterford manager Shane O'Hearn being disappointed. Like James Woodlock was the same afterwards. He feels, look, Tip, while it was an exciting game, high scoring, there was an awful lot of mistakes from both sides. I thought Tip's maybe first touch for a lot of the game, maybe there was 2 and 3 times getting the ball up. I'm sure that's an element that could be sharpened up. And I mentioned earlier about maybe that goal chant at the end where Paddy McCormack maybe just selfishly took his own point from maybe Damien Corbett was inside, and the goal at that stage would have finished the game off. There would have been no nervousness trying to hang on and the ball coming into the square. Just things like that. So look, I think both teams will take an awful lot of that game. I suppose it's ideal for both Waterford and Tip at minor level to get a game like that first off and not really have any. There wasn't too much at stake really, because you had the loser was going to have the fallback of probably a quarter final anyway. But look, Tip have the confidence of a win now, and it'll be interesting to see their approach now for Clare next weekend. Will they take that confidence into it? How much will they improve and things like that? It was like it. I'm delighted for Woody and the boys. They took an awful hammering last year. Look, it wasn't easy for them coming in last year, having very, very little time to prepare. And look, it didn't go well in that Munster semi-final against Waterford. And but look, particularly those players, you say 14 of the survivors, and a lot of those guys would have had a few hangovers from that too. So particularly for those young guys, they're only 16, 17 years of age. Can't forget that. These boys are still 3, 4, 5 years away from playing senior hurling. It's like the bar you're an elite 19, 20-year-old, you're not going to play senior hurling for a good few years.
The Tipperary under 20 hurlers are out this evening against Kerry at Austin Stack Park. Also have a game against Waterford next Wednesday. Now, look, maybe in some ways people can expect to win this game this evening, but we'll have a look at the team here and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I can't remember how many survivors from last year. We have Conor O'Dwyer, Mikey Cork, and Johnny Campion, Stapleton, Jack Leamy. The inside forward line is the one that sticks out. Their scores there, just 3 quality forwards. Leamy, Creedon, they're probably physical. McGarry's a real life wire. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe McGarry drifts out around the half forward line. Your own clubman Eddie Ryan, very, very good free taker. Shane Gleeson was actually the goalie on the Tip minor team 3 years ago, but he does play an awful lot of outfield hurling for Killadangan, their Premier Intermediate team. Good tall guy, well able to take a score. Be interested to see, particularly him and Ed Connolly. They're probably going to be asked to do an awful lot of run, forage, and maybe back the field. How will they have the legs to get up and down there? I was very impressed with Johnny Campion last year in middle of the field, and I thought when he went off injured in the Munster semi-final against Cork, Tip were 6 points up in that Munster semi-final, and things fell apart in the second half. And I thought when he wasn't on the field, Tip lost an awful lot of leadership and drive from the middle of the field. So I think him and Stakelum, 2 survivors from last year, excuse me, will be important. I was very impressed with Cahill Quinn at underage level for the under 17s. I'm interested to see how he goes again. Michael Corcoran was very, very good for the UL freshers this year. I definitely think offensively we're looking very strong. Look, there's a very, very good bench there. I was surprised. Kyle Shelley's very physical. Conor Mcelvey, I thought maybe his progress had stagnated for a few years, but from talking to Brendan Cummins, they're really impressed with how Conor Mcelvey has kicked on now under his tutelage. And I was really surprised that Sean Kennelly, there was no place for Sean Kennelly in the starting 15 because I have great time for that chap from Moneygall. So look, if he can't, I don't know whether he's been carrying an injury or maybe he's working his way back from something, but if he can't find his way into that starting 15, the 6 forwards ahead of him must be playing pretty well.
Yeah, do you know, actually, when you look at the bench as well, number 17 there, Conor Cahill, after watching him up close and personal with the UL freshers this year, like he was brilliant that day. And like John Campion and Darius Declan are obviously excellent, but it just shows the depth that's there. And you know, the other thing that kind of sprung to mind as I was casting my eye over this team is Darius Declan, Paddy Creedon, Ed Connolly. These are players that all made a big impact in the latter stages of the senior Tipperary Championship last year. And obviously Eddie Ryan as well, glorious striker of the ball that I'd see from Bursley. So looking pretty good from a Tip point of view when you look at that team. But are we being a bit too quick to look past the Kerry game and start talking about Waterford next week?
I don't think so. Like I know, look, you look at the minor result last night in Cork, were comfortable winners over Kerry, but I would have seen the Kerry under-17s last year. There's a couple of nice hurlers down there, and I think Colin Walsh is on their senior team. I think that's his name, and he'd be probably seen as wouldn't say he'd be the Shane Conway, or he'd probably the Shane Conway-esque type player. Like, so, look, I suppose what doesn't help Kerry is the fact that Brendan Cummins and Fintan O'Connor are the Tip under-20 managers. If they would have known every up-and-coming Kerry player over the last 4 or 5 years, so look, they'll be forewarned. I think they'll be the best scouted Kerry team of all time, just because the Tip manager and coach know who they are. So, look, I think they'll get the respect they deserve, and I think it's a nice tune-up into the Waterford game next weekend. Because like that's going to be the big one. Because like I would have seen Paddy Fitzgerald from De La Salle this year. He'll be eligible for the Waterford team, and the interesting one for me for that game will be will Cormac Daly play in that match? Like he would be eligible then, but then if he plays the following Sunday against Tip, he becomes uneligible. Or will Liam Cahill might decide, okay, will I leave Daly with the under-20s until I need him maybe further? Because like he has loads of options, but Daly was so, but now if that was part of his thinking, but then looking at how good he was against Cork, you think he's too good not to start in senior. Like he's senior ready now, and I know people get frustrated with maybe the way the under-20 has been downgraded, but I'm firmly of the believer, if you've graduated to senior, you're blocking a space for maybe somebody else, an under-20 maybe to develop. Like, so I think I'm in the minority camp that the under-20 grade is development, but it'll be interesting to see. I know Adam English and Colin O'Neill are the same boat with Limerick. Like they can play. I'm not sure whether Limerick are out tonight or whether they have the bye.
And their names, they've three seniors started.
Yeah, but interesting to see would they play next week or the week or like as soon as they're used by the Limerick seniors, they go out. I suppose Limerick are going to be the hardest ones hit. We know Kieran Joyce of Cork is going to play senior, so he's going to be ineligible. But Cormac Daly is the one interesting one for me, because you think Waterford have a deep enough panel. If they wanted to leave him off to the 20s for a while, they could do that. But I think Liam Cahill's ruthless to say. I think he's of the mindset, Liam Cahill, Daly's ready now. He doesn't need to play under 20. He's ready for senior now. So I don't expect. I would be surprised to see Daly play under 20 next week against Tip.
Yeah, number one, I wish it was still under 21, and number two, I wish it didn't make players ineligible. Like their midweek games, it is tough on young players, but my God, they're full of energy. And maybe you could host it at a slightly different time of the year. But either way, I just thought under 21 used to be so good a couple of years. Yeah. You'd look forward to these huge games on TG Carr or going to them. And now it feels like it's just been diluted more and more all the time with these lads not playing. Like Kerry would have won a couple of under 20 titles there in recent years if they had the likes of Sean O'Shea and Dave Clifford. It does take something away from the achievement of the other county who then goes on to win when they're not beating the best person, Kerry, etc.
I agree with you. I understand that point. I just I suppose that's just my mentality. I think if you've already graduated a senior team, what have you to prove? You're only going back to win with your team. And that's a nice thing in itself. It'll be interesting. I think Tipperary of the Munster teams are the only ones that aren't effective, because there's no senior panelists on the under-20 panel. I know the under-20 footballers have one, but I suppose Tip are not on the senior championship till the end of the month, and there's probably a fair chance that Tip under-20s will be knocked out by then, that Cahill Deely won't. His status to play as the year goes on won't be effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, some good stuff going on in the next few days, and then next week we'll be building up to the Munster opener against Waterford. We look forward to doing that. Don't forget to pick up a copy of the Nina Guardian. It's out available now. Thanks very much, Shane. We'll do it again next week.
Talk to you then.